Hello, everyone. My name is Connie Kadansky. I am thrilled to be interviewing Mark Shelley about his book, Relationship Owner's Manual. Mark is a semi-retired professor of social science. He's been a coach since 2002, and his co-author is his brother, who is a counselor and also from Ontario, Canada. Mark is ICF Arizona's 2021 VP of Membership for Northern Arizona. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks, Connie.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I ordered your book and it sat there for a couple of weeks. And one day I thought, I'm going to just pick this up. And it was so informative. So my first question to you is, where did this idea come to write this book?
Well, I have to give my brother credit. Actually, that it came because we together did some workshops with the William Glasser Institute. And some of those were up in Ontario. In fact, all of them were in Ontario. So I'd fly up there and we'd go to these workshops. And I'd been coaching for a while and he was just starting his counseling practice. And so we would talk and see how we could apply these principles and that kind of thing. And that took place over a number of years. So we drove around a lot, stayed in motels together a lot, talked a lot. And as a result, this stuff just kept percolating up. We said, there are common things among all relationships from all the clients we've talked to in our own marriages. What we concluded is there were things in all the relationship issues that we saw from talking to people in our own marriages that were common to everybody. And as we reflected over our own growing up in our own childhood, our parents really never talked to us about relationships. You know, we had the birds and the bees talk and the don't waste your money talk and all those kind of things, but never anything about relationships. And what we observed in a lot of the people we were coaching is that they didn't have any background either. So we said, somebody needs to put out here just some basics that people can follow and that people can think about in terms of relationships. So that's how the idea from the book came.
So who is your ideal reader?
Anybody in a relationship or anybody looking forward to a relationship or anybody who has been through a breakup and has been heartbroken. We think these principles are pretty much universal to people in relationships. I think they probably have some application to business and leadership and co-workers, although that's not what we aim the book at.
Well, so Mark, when I read your book, I really enjoyed the illustrations that kind of brought some things home. And the one thing that really got my attention was dealing with resentment. And I think that there are those little resentments that just build up over time and kind of chunk away at trust and respect. So share with us is about what is it that you zero in on really handling those resentments that I haven't heard or read anywhere else.
Well, it's funny that you talk about that because I just had a coaching session yesterday morning and it was about relationships and it came down to resentment. And I think what happens with the resentment is we don't realize how it eats away at us. It's like a cancer and it builds, it's cumulative. And I think most people don't realize that. Even if resentments aren't related, if we're resenting, then they build up and they build up and they build up. And so I really liked, and this was Kent's idea, the idea of taking out the trash. And I have coached many couples. I says, go out in your backyard, dig a hole, put a stake there. And whenever you feel that those resentments coming up, go out, check to make sure the stake is there, check to make sure, you know, the hole's covered up, and leave your resentments there.
Yeah.
So many of our clients have just come back and said, you know, when I can let go of that resentment, everything else starts to happen.
Yes. And I think that what was so profound is our resentments are trash. They really are.
Mhm.
And that was kind of it was a little bit of a shock, but you know how it is a shock is good for us once in a while.
Yes.
So what makes your book different than other relationship books?
I think kind of the practical focus. Both of us are pretty practical in our coaching and, pretty goal oriented. And I think my own experience with marital counseling and people who I've coached who've had marital counseling is sometimes you spend a lot of time in the past and a lot of time trying to figure stuff out that maybe you just can't figure out instead of looking forward. The other thing that I think makes our book on relationships unique is that we don't start with the relationship. We believe relationships start with the individual. One of the motivations for this book is my nephew, actually Ken's middle son, and I shared an apartment when I was commuting up here from Phoenix to Prescott to teach. And he came into my room one night and he said, I really want a girlfriend. He's about 19, 20, early adult. And I asked him, I said, well, what kind of girlfriend do you want? So he starts describing to me, not only physically, but, what she would like, what she would enjoy, how she would act. And I said, Luke, why don't you work on becoming the kind of person that would be attractive to the person you want? And so the whole thing of ruling your personal kingdom well, we think is the foundation for relationships. Relationships don't just happen. This Christmas, Carolyn and I have been watching a lot of Hallmark movies, and relationships aren't Hallmark movies. They don't follow a predictable plot. And it really starts with us. And the more I can become my best self, the better my relationship is.
Yes. And isn't that where coaching comes in? To be able
Absolutely.
to, so you were coaching him in there. Yes.
Yeah.
So what do you believe is the biggest misconception around relationships?
That the other person can make me happy.
Wow.
I don't even hesitate with that. That's the biggest misconception is when I coach couples and they say, well, he's not meeting my needs. He's not making me happy. And that's the biggest misconception is we get into a relationship so that we can be happy. And because we're in a relationship with another human being, they're never going to perfectly make us happy.
Yes. Well, I've got something to run by you as far as intimate relationships, that when we have intimate relationships and start out, is the reason that we feel good when we're with this person, is it because it's not we feel good about them, but we feel good about who we are when we're with them?
Oh, I think you're right on. Just like we feel good when we get a compliment. I think when you're dating and you're in what we call the pre-formal stage of relationships, it's about being valued and being complimented and being treasured. And I think that's what we all want to hold on to.
And aren't we good listeners? We're in the dating relationship.
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, what have you learned about your relationship from writing this book?
Oh my gosh, there's so much where to start. I think that the thing that I've learned most is to not get hung up and not get personally offended by the little things that happen in our relationships that I might interpret as stubs or her not connecting. In our book, we talked about assuming the best intentions of your partner. And I think that's one thing I've been able to practice more since we worked on the book, is it just giving Carolyn the benefit of the doubt that, okay, so she's had a bad day, but she's not out to destroy me. So I shouldn't take that personally.
Yes, and Mark, that takes some emotional maturity, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's why we included the chapter on what we would call as coaches emotional intelligence, but we called it emotionally overreacting, which we see as that comes up all the time in our work with couples. Is, you know, we can see it in the interactions, just watching them, that there's this emotional overreaction, and it's not easy. It's a learned skill, we believe.
Yes. And so in your coaching practice, tell us about it. And also, is that how you're using your book?
Yes, and my coaching practice with couples, it, it's it it goes all over the place. I've had couples who are not married, who are living together, who are having problems, and they say, "Hey, we need help with this." I just recently had a couple whose the husband got caught up in some far right kind of cultish things, left the wife and the husband. I coached both of them for a while, and then they both decided this is not what we want for each other. And so they went their separate ways. So I really approach it. My first question is, what do you want? What do you want out of this time together? And some of them say, we want to put our relationship back together. Some say, we just want to make it better. Some say, we're on the brink of splitting up, and we want to know if that's what we want to do. And if so, how do we do it? So,
Well, so Mark, I'm sure this is a question that you've received before. So how is the coaching for relationships different than therapy?
okay, first of all, I don't assume either of the partners is damaged. I don't assume they're ill. I don't diagnose them or anything. And the other assumption that makes it really different is that, and I won't say this of every counselors, but many counselors, I think when couples come to them, they look at the counselor as the expert. And I can't be an expert on other people's lives. They're the experts on their lives. And so I'm very clear with them up front. I'm here to help guide you. I'm here to ask clarifying questions, penetrating questions, challenging questions to get you to think. But I believe that I don't have the answer to your relationship. You have the answer to your relationship. And I think that's a big difference between counseling and coaching.
Yeah, that's good positioning too. So how do you plan on marketing your book?
That's a really good question, Connie. I'm open to input on that. So far, Kent's marketing it with his clients. He uses it with lots of his clients, and his clients tell other people. Most of it has been word of mouth for me. It's on Amazon and it's on iUniverse and some other things, but you know there are millions and millions of books out there. So to get your book noticed on those, I think we're basically using it as a tool for our clients or friends or other coaches. I've sold quite a few copies to other coaches in the area, and they said, "Wow, we want this for ourselves or our clients." Or I had one of my fellow coaches saying, "I want to give this to each of my kids, my adult children, for Christmas," and they bought a bunch of them to give them as gifts to Christmas. So one of the things we would like to do, which we haven't done yet, but the way our contract worked with the book is that iUniverse had rights to the book for a year. So that was October of this year. So now we're free to go to another publisher and see if we can get it published. So we're pursuing that avenue as well, maybe get a little bit more exposure for the book.
So last question here. What book are you reading right now?
Oh, I've got, my wife makes fun of me. She's one of these who takes one book and reads through it. I've got 4 or 5 going at one time. And so right now I'm reading a book on the Underground Railroad, particularly Mr. Cudjoe, who was the last remaining African-American slave that escaped the last boat that brought slaves into the U.S. in 1858 in Mobile, Alabama. I'm planning on bicycling the Underground Railroad this next year, probably starting in March. It's about 2,400 miles, and I start in Mobile, Alabama, and I end up in Owen Sound, Ontario. So
And
So that's what I'm reading right now.
so there's such a route, huh?
Yes, there is.
Very interesting. Well, Mark, it sounds like you have a very interesting life with a lot of different activities, and with your coaching, I really commend you. And so for the listeners, we'll make sure that they get the contact information. Mark said that he has some books and that he'll personally autograph those and send them your way. So thanks again, Mark.
Well, thank you, Connie.